All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with PowerToFly. My name is Mariella, and today I am very excited to roll into this next hour with you all. If I know any of you on this chat, or if you've joined previous Chat and Learns here where I've moderated, you know that I have a thing about mindfulness and technology. So I'm ready to learn with everyone and take notes. We've got a great guest speaker here today who's got lots of knowledge to drop. But before we roll into this next hour and get to all of your beautiful questions that you've submitted offline, just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. I'll also start by saying you could be doing anything else in this crazy time that we are all experiencing around the globe, but you're deciding to be with us for the hour. So I want to say thank you. I see you. I appreciate you. With that said, I've muted everyone upon entrance just to avoid any background noise, but I can't stress enough, and I'm going to sound like a broken record by the end of this chat. Feel free to come off mute, share your voice. You know, if you have a dream last night that you want to share, an anecdote, if you have some, books that you want to share and put on screen, go ahead and do that. We want to hear from you. If you cannot come off mute, feel free to write in the chat box. I'd love to see the chat box action starting now. We've actually got people writing where they're calling from. So if you're just joining, hello and welcome. Go ahead and get the chat box warmed up and let us know where you're calling from. If you do come off of mute, you will be featured in our live recording. And with that said, I'll just start off how I always do. I know we live in a world where everyone is multitasking, but we ask for you to be present, especially on this chat. And then you can rewatch this video later on PowerToFly, and you can take notes vigorously there. But please be present so that we can hear from you. Since you're here live with us, we want to hear from you. And if you have any sensitive information, you can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie and write to me anonymously, and I'll flag your comment to our guest speaker. The last thing that I'll say is we would love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got coming up. So I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker now, Kay. Kay, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to know about PowerToFly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
So I'm Kay, and I am the founder of Mindful Use of Technology, where we teach and train people about how to bring the principles of mindfulness into our relationships with tech, and how do we create the world and the outcomes that we want to create for ourselves. I like to say my career grew up in the tech industry. I'm still in it today. I live and breathe it. Technology is amazing. It allows me to connect with y'all today. It provides my livelihood, but I totally understand that balance is hard. I'm really a big buff into fitness. I'm like obsessed with it. And so I don't have my Sameda here to like brag for me, but I like do crazy things where I like do a burpee mile or do just crazy challenges to always keep it interesting and motivating and fun. PowerToFly, I learned from, I don't even know, it just got on my radar and I got on a mailing list, and it was just every time I see it, I just get inspired and I'm like, yes, I want to be a part of this community. So I'm really excited to participate with y'all today and start sharing some hopefully interesting and helpful tips today around this space.
Beautiful. So I know you've got a beautiful presentation to share. So let's just go ahead and get started. We'll walk through this. I'll take your lead, and then we'll roll into your awesome questions that you all have submitted offline. So I'll pass the mic back to you, Kay.
Thank you. So really to set the context for how I'm going to answer y'all's questions and really this space, mindful use to technology, a lot of the ways we like to open our trainings and seminars is to ask you all to turn off your phones. So if you want to go ahead and do that, I ask that you do, or close any other windows that may be open. We have the next hour to talk to each other today, so you shouldn't need them. And then I can't see all of y'all, so I can't tell if y'all are actually doing it or not. But then my next question is always to ask, how did that question make you feel? Did you get really panicked and say, there's just no way I can do that? Or were you like, yep, sure, did it, done that. I don't even know where my phone is. No matter where you are on that range, it really is just showing you the awareness. It's bringing those subconscious reactions and habits and feelings to the surface level so that we know where we stand with tech. And so if you go to the next slide, Mariella, I really want to provide some context of what I mean by mindfulness. And it's really two very essential pieces, awareness and intention. And you can think of it a lot like Google Maps. You have to know where you are before you can get directions on where you want to go. So awareness building, and hopefully the questions and some of the research I share with y'all today will kind of help you understand, how does technology impact our brains and our behaviors? What is our personal individual relationships with technology? Each of us is a unique human with a unique set of variables and dependencies on why we use tech and how we use it. So really understanding our own personal, how much time we spend with it, why we use it, and then understand, where do we want to go? So part of awareness is identifying, what is my intention, and being very clear about, there's this general digital fatigue cloud that we know we need less screen time. And that's great, but that's a how. If you ask yourself, why do I want less screen time? That why answer is part of your intention. So being very specific about that will help you understand, okay, here's where I am today. That's where I want to go. Here are the steps to take. And what I like about this slide is that it's not, unlike Google Maps, it's not a very efficient route. And that's because we're humans. And so things come our way, life happens. We give in to technology and get into that infinite scroll loop. Things happen. But the power of mindfulness and the power of having that intention in front of you helps you reroute. It helps you constantly check and adjust, so that even if you kind of fall or make a wrong turn, you're able to get back on course and find out, okay, this is where I'm trying to go. So on the next slide, you'll see us break down what a typical mindfulness journey looks like. I would like to preface that it's not easy, unfortunately. It's like with any sort of change for our habits and just what we're used to doing. You can think of it like similar to a fitness change or a nutrition health diet change. It's incredibly difficult. And like I mentioned, the first step is always awareness, understanding where you are and where you want to go, and your own personal impact for it. And then once you know where you're going to go, you then fall into experiences, or experiments, I like to call it. And this is where those tips come into play. And this is where you just start. I want to encourage to have fun with it, because the whole point is you are trying to find ways to unlock your intention. You want, I'll talk about it later about the different areas, but there are things that you want to create in your life, and there are things you want to accomplish. And so these experiments are ways to try things. And it's always easier to try something when you know it's temporary. So for 2 to 4 weeks, try out the different tips that we talk about today, see what works, what doesn't work, be objective with it, have fun with it. And then once you kind of have more of that data for yourself, that's when consistent effort comes in. And this is kind of the hardest part, but it's the most important part, because those habit changes, to change those reflexes and those reactions, takes time. It's a daily practice. Mindfulness truly is a practice. And all the things that we're going to talk about today are not going to be easy. Again, we're kind of overriding some parts of our brains that are being trained to act certain ways. But once you have that consistent effort, once you unlock those abilities for yourself, then you start seeing those intentions come true. And last but not least is a supportive environment. When I started my own personal journey many years ago, I had one other person with me to really support each other through these things. I started this company before COVID started. These are trends that were already happening. So it was really hard for us to find a lot of people who really were gung-ho. People understood, they were supportive, but really someone I could talk to about it. And one reason why I like to host these trainings and seminars at companies is because often we find that work-life balance is really difficult with technology. And when your coworkers and peers are aligned with you, are working towards similar goals, it makes it that much easier to be successful, and make it that much easier to understand, what can we really do to reach our goals. And then the next slide, think is my last spiel on context, is where we start putting our intentions. We have this big cloud of digital fatigue. We know we feel burnt out. We feel these things. We feel that overwhelm. We feel that anxiety, that stress. And the world it's happening. It's going on. There's the pandemic. There are social and political strifes that are happening. We're trying to do our quote normal things like taking care of our family and ourselves. And it's incredibly difficult. So how do we understand where we can make some positive changes? And so what our research and our experience has shown is that these 6 areas tend to be the most common impacted areas. It's not an exhaustive list. Like if finances, if shopping online is like your jam, that's not here, but that's an area to focus on, and it equates to any of these. But these 6 areas tend to be where most people find themselves. Oh, I can easily be motivated to improve this area or that area. And the beauty of this is that none of these live in a silo. So even if you choose to focus and scope your mindfulness practice towards a specific area, the beauty of it is that it has a ripple effect and you'll find it making a positive impact around you. So just to quickly go over what these areas are. Focus, it's all about being able to, do the task at hand. Like, are you getting distracted? Is multitasking your thing? Context switching your thing? Really being able to accomplish the task and meet your standards for how you do that task. There's relationships. This can be anyone in your sphere or your world, your family, your friends, your coworkers, your community, your neighbors. Are those connections where you want them to be? Even if you're an introvert, if you're an extrovert, no matter where you are, deep connection in relationships is proven to show increase in well-being and happiness. So they're very important. Sleep is very, very important. I think we often take for granted how much our sleeping hours impacts our waking hours. And yet it often tends to be the first thing we push back so that we have more time to do things for ourselves. So sleep is all about the quantity of sleep, the quality of sleep. If you're noticing an impact there, that may be a good area for you to focus in. There's also stress, which there are a lot of triggers in the world today, emotionally, mentally, those feelings of anxiety and overwhelm. Those are real things that impact a lot of how we're able to work and to support ourselves in our life. So any sort of impact there may be an area of focus for you. There's physical body, which is pretty self-explanatory, but I think a lot of the questions had eye problems, but your headaches, back, wrists, carpal tunnel, there are an increase in thumb injuries because of how our devices work today. We had one participant in a workshop whose eye doctor had to prescribe for her to close her eyes all the way because she wasn't blinking fully and it was causing a lot of eye problems. So it can manifest in many different ways. And so just being aware of if that's where you need to put your focus and intention behind, by all means, do that. And then the last area is productivity, which is often coupled with focus, but the difference here is it's the ability to prioritize and complete the most prioritized thing for yourself. And an example I like to give is there are many weekends where my priority is to mow the lawn. I live in a neighborhood with an HOA. I will get fined. So if I spend that weekend, binge watching the Great British Bake Off or Criminal Minds or whatever, and I didn't do my lawn mowing, then I'm not being productive. And if my intention was to have, a very relaxing, entertained weekend, then I did it. But I know deep down that was not my intention. My intention was to get something important done. So that's when we start balancing the behavior changes. I want to make it very clear that when I talk about these sort of quote bad habits, that no engagement with technology is inherently bad. Nothing is negative. We should not be judgmental of how much time we spend with tech, how we engage with tech. That is not the purpose of technology or this talk today. It's really unlocking the ways of, is that time spent doing what we want to do for ourselves? Is it getting us to our intentions, or is it taking away from them? So that kind of balance is really what I want to emphasize today.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm throwing digital confetti at you. I told you I would when we were speaking offline because again, these conversations, I'm happy that they are circulating in our industry, especially now when we're actually forced to be working more online and being with our technology more. So thank you so much for putting it so clearly as well. I love that you're starting at the root, which is setting an intention, and also to be aware of yourself, of your body, of how is your body reacting and speaking to you, and how is it affecting your relationships and the world around you. So much beautiful notes to take there when you rewatch this video, because I know everyone is off their phones and I know everyone is not multitasking. I also just want to shout out to your first question when you asked everyone to turn their phones off. So Phil said, done, phone is off. Julia said, it made me want to check for messages one more time before I really did it. I put I'm getting into a habit of, putting my phone on airplane mode as I am currently working, but I do need to, not have things buzzing at me and calling my attention. So, Kay, again, thank you so much for sharing this.
Of course. And there are so many studies out there that show that impact, and it's causing these reactions in ourselves that we just take for granted day by day. We tend to run on autopilot. We don't know consciously that over time these are just behaviors that get harder and harder to break away from. So building that awareness muscle is just as important as making the actual changes in our lives. Just understanding it gives us so much more power to do what we need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So you've got another slide here. Do you want to walk us
Oh,
through this one?
yes. Last slide is so the whole point of mindful use of technology is bringing this awareness into groups, into supportive environments. We do workshops, courses, lunch and learns, and seminars. We mostly focus on companies and corporations. So if this is something that you want to bring to your work and really try to shift the culture into helping support in these things, we are here for you. I totally understand how hard it is. I know there was a question about, being an IC and how do you, if you're not a manager, how do you bring these conversations up? And I'll definitely talk about that. But this is one way to really help. We go into more exercises and it's very interactive to help you identify these focus areas, identify your intentions, really allow you to connect and share and bring these vulnerabilities into the workplace, which I know is very difficult many times. But I think it's very important to kind of open that door, and you'll be amazed at how well received it can be, and really change the culture to support these kinds of things. And then we actually, of course, will practice and practice what we preach, essentially. So if this is something you're interested in, even if it's just on an individual level, please reach out to us. We love hearing individual stories. We love just impacting people. That's the heart of why I created this company. I know this is a struggle for people, and I have some of the answers and some of the keys to unlock these doors. So just really helping people is my passion.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right. So let's move into these questions that you all have submitted offline. I'll also go ahead and say, if anyone wants to reflect or, ask some extra questions, feel free to use the chat box at your leisure. We want to hear from you. But we'll start with this first question here. We'll take these questions one by one. If you see your question come on the screen, again, feel free to come off mute or write in the chat box. If this is not your question and you want to add your 2 cents or you want to add a story or a dream that you had last night, feel free to do so as well. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. We want to hear from you. Okay, so let's start with this question, Kay. We live in a digital world of information overload and too much screen time. How can we reap the benefits of technology but not let it take over our lives?
This is a great question, and it's a big question because it is, again, all about that intention setting and awareness building. I think the only way we can find out for ourselves how to balance it is what exactly are we trying to create? When we talk about reaping the benefits of technology, what does that mean to you? Is it your ability to connect with others? Is it your ability to do your job? Is it your ability to create things? Whatever that is really being able to focus on that intention. And then as you create behaviors, as you interact with technology, really focusing on those things. And so setting, I think there's other questions about how to set boundaries for yourself and how to, schedule your time with technology. I think these are all, I unfortunately, I have to be kind of high level and vague because the question is so large, but it's really identifying, once you can scope down what you want to create in the world, that helps you identify, okay, here are like the platforms I need to engage with online. And once you start, finding yourself in these time sucks of, Facebook scrolling or Reddit scrolling or whatever your Achilles heel is, being able to kind of trigger yourself of, oh, wait, is this always checking and adjusting? Okay, I initially came here to do X, Y, and Z, but now it's been an hour. Did I do those things? Did I get distracted? And then you can course correct as you will. So that's, hopefully that helps give some guidance, but whoever asked this, if you have a more specific question, I can definitely try and help answer that as well.
I love that you are, I mean, we're totally scratching the surface here. And again, that's why we're asking you all to join with your voice or write in the chat box. I'll probe here and dig a little deeper. How is it that we've arrived to, being, having our attention being capitalized to where then we need to set these boundaries, as users of technology? I'd love for you to just share your research or anything that you have to say to just not to make us more comfortable. I know that some of us have seen the documentaries that are coming out now, like Social Dilemma, things like that. Yeah, can you just touch the surface on those topics?
Sure. I mean, the Center for Humane Technology, which created that Social Dilemma movie, was a big inspiration for me as we started this company, because it was trying to create ethical practices of design. And I think people who created these technologies, excuse me, I don't think any of them had, a malicious intent. I think anyone who creates technology, and I'm going to pull out the big names, Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg, they just had a really awesome idea and they were super smart and they were able to create this wonderful thing for us that unlocked all these amazing doors for us. But unfortunately, as time goes on, as these small businesses got larger, we have to be aware that they are profit businesses. They are trying to make money. And the way these kinds of companies make money is the more attention and time they get from us, the more money they make through ads and things like that. And, when you look at, I'll use Facebook as a good example. They will create anything to keep your attention going. They created those games. You remember Farmville from back then? Today, it's the ads and the infinite scrolling. And even as an individual, if you're like, who clicks those ads? I don't click those ads. Enough percentage of people do. And while even if you don't click the ads, you still have access to infinite scrolling. So these companies know the kinds of content and have your search history and know what to show you to keep you engaged. So even if you don't fall for the tricks of how they make money, the user interface changes, the user interaction design of a lot of these platforms is meant to keep you engaged. They are aware of the same studies that we are aware of the reward circuitry, of the dopamine hits, that we can't control. They just fire off in our brains because it's very evolutionary wise part of our core of how we as humans work. So they monetize that, which is really unfortunate. So we have to set these boundaries for ourselves. I don't think any of these technologies or platforms are inherently bad. I use a lot of them today, but as we build our awareness, this is why we have to be more structured and be more responsible as we engage with them.
Yes, I love these big, beautiful words that you're using: awareness, intention, responsibility. Something that I often speak about on these chats is, I feel like a lot of these tech companies are being highly irresponsible. And we see that in these kinds of documentaries. And the double-edged sword is that a lot of us who work in the tech industry, who might create content or, develop interfaces, we fall victim to these same things that we're creating. So it's really interesting. And I love that one of the things that you said is to experiment. Because actually, if not, now is the best time to be experimenting, in my opinion, because like you said, we're in such a critical time. We're at a crossroads, essentially, where, we're all looking at ourselves right now. Look at this. When is the last, this has never happened in history when we're just looking at ourselves and speaking in this way. So they're experimenting. We can experiment as well. I'm going to flag here something that Pam has written in the chat box. To help me not react as much, I turn the notification sounds and pop-ups off of apps and incoming emails, and silence my phone when I'm in meetings or need to concentrate on a task. Along with that, turning my phone face down so I don't visually react as well. Do you want to comment on some of that, Kay?
Yes, I love this. This is exactly how you take control of the situation. Notifications are designed to grab your attention, and many of the notifications today are to keep you engaged with the platform. They're not necessarily something that you care about or need to be aware of at that given time. So turning off notifications, every time you get a notification, you get a hit a dopamine. And this is because our brains are wired to reward social successes. And in today's modern day, that's how it works. So we literally feel good when we get those notifications. So turning them off helps us diminish that kind of false sense of reactions and those chemical reactions in our brains. And then we can choose when to engage with the technology. The technology doesn't tell us when to engage with it. We can stay in control of that. And a really big thing I like about with turning the phone face down, there was a really interesting study that was done at UT Austin, where they had 3 different groups of people. And one group had their phone on the desk, another group had their phone in their pocket or a bag, and then the third group had their phone in a different room entirely. And they had all the people do the same tasks. And at the end, they measured how well those tasks were done and found that the group who had the phone on the desk significantly did less well than the other 2 groups. And then later, they asked the participants who had no idea that this was a study about phones or anything like that. They were just told to do this task. No participant consciously mentioned that a phone was a distraction or that they looked at their phone, showing that the same cognitive resources that are used in completing our tasks are also being used to look at our phone and decide not to engage with it. So just the pure sight of our phone is draining our cognitive resources. It's minimizing our capacity to the task at hand. So hiding your phone is a really, really powerful tool that you may not even be aware of could be draining your brain. And if you think of how often is your phone within your line of sight, how often do you go, like when we could go to meetings, the phone, the laptops, everything was open, and you're trying to make these important decisions, knowing that you're not at your full capacity. So I think those are things that are very important.
Yes, and we've got the chat box blowing up, so I'm just going to flag a couple of
Yeah.
things here. Thank you all in advance. So Carrie writes, I love iPhone's do not disturb. When I was in a different time zone every week, that kept my office hours from chatting with me at 5 a.m. when I was in Singapore. Great, Carrie. All right, Julia writes, yes, I've also been more aggressive on using the do not disturb as well, especially when group texts start flying in. Great tips here. My sister read a book that suggested you put a hair tie on your phone so you can become more aware of how often you pick it up. And then Pam writes, thanks for this feedback. A lot of times I would also leave my phone at my desk and not bring it to meetings. Did you want to comment on any of those?
I mean, these are all great. I feel like a lot of you are already optimizing some of the tools. So again, these companies they're late in the game, but they are trying to create some features for us to help us give that physical disruption, that physical boundary, and really help us do these things. So Apple's been good at that. Even like Instagram will have internal timers in the apps. So really, when you look at these, your technology, your apps, if there are already built-in ways to turn on Do Not Disturbs, if there are timers you can put on, I highly encourage you to use those, because a lot of times, we're so busy, we're distracted, we don't realize how much time has passed. And so these are really great ways to add those. I would also add web browser extensions like site block, which you can tell it which sites to actually block for you. And I personally had to do that for Facebook on my work computer because it was such a subconscious habit for me to open a web browser and type Facebook, and I'm looking at my news feed, not realizing that I had no conscious decision to do that. It just happened. So now I use site block, and I see every time I try to go to Facebook, I see a little puppy looking at a piece of cake that it can't have. And I'm like, oh yeah. So those physical reminders are also really great to see as well.
I love it. I love this. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. Again, if this is your question, we'd love to hear from you. I struggle with so much technology being used for work and life. iPad to read, TV to watch movies, phone to stay in touch with friends, etc. I'm interested in a few tips here besides buying hardcover books. I love this question.
I love this question too, because again, there's so much tech out there that is part of um, just part of everything. It's everywhere. You know, there was always like an app for that. There's an app for that. And now we're trying to course correct our dependencies on it. And I think, again, it's always going back to what's your intention? I don't think any one of these things is a bad use of technology. I don't think any of this is wrong or incorrect. It's really, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to be entertained? Then maybe, putting on Netflix is fine without having that guilt that you should be doing something else. Reading on your iPad is totally fine. However, if your intention is have a good night's sleep, I think that being aware of, the blue light emissions from these devices suppresses our melatonin, which controls our circadian rhythm. And it does that twice as much as coffee. So how many of us are going to take a shot of espresso right before bed? Like, hopefully not many, but how many of us, how common is it to go to sleep with your phone, or to read off of your iPad or watch TV even? So again, just being aware that those things can happen, I think can help you decide when is the right moment to use tech. So I think timing is really big there. If you have to use tech for reading, I would recommend getting like a e-ink e-reader, like the lower end Kindles and Nooks, not the tablet versions, but those still emit blue light, but not as much. So that's one way to like kind of diminish that amount of blue light. I think there's like the blue light glasses, which are kind of up in the air on their actual effectiveness, but I've heard plenty of anecdotes that say they're helpful. So I think everything is worth trying. Again, it's all experiments, right? Whatever works for you. But if there are other ways to, for reading or watching movies, to me, those are forms of entertainment. So if there are other things you'd like to do, like jigsaw puzzles, gardening, playing the ukulele, whatever it is that isn't necessarily tech related, and you want to be consciously aware of that, find those hobbies, unlock those doors for yourself, and be intentional with it. It's like, why do you want to be entertained in that way? Like, what do you hope to do with that? And then as far as staying in touch with friends, this is where I think technology is necessary, especially with the quarantine and things that are going on, is we have to use tech. So during those moments of intentional connection building, like we said before, hide the phones, close all the other browser windows that you have up, use the whiteboard feature to play Pictionary, really give all of your resources and cognitive capacity to the connection. And that's what's going to fulfill your intentions of connecting with friends, etc. And then once that connection building's over, then walking away from technology and for yourself, maybe doing something different, something separate. And I think that's important. Again, it's all about that balance, right? But those resources and focus time can do some amazing things. I don't know, we always realize the power of what we can do when we're not distracted. Even if you're sitting together as a family watching Netflix, is half your family also on their phones? Is it like screens in front of screens in front of screens? So having those moments of, no, we all want to enjoy this experience together, even if it's with technology, I think is also important to really be aware of what technology you're using it, why you're using it, and how is it really impacting yourself.
Oh, you just made me remember. I spoke to a friend about this the other day. Back in the day when we could go see live music performances, but even further back when everyone would watch the like Beyonce on the small screen, and like, no, I don't want to watch your screen. Please put your screen down, you know. And I remember then making a choice within myself, like, I'm not going to be that person anymore. Like, I can't, because I would fall into it too, because it's the reaction. Oh yeah, got to save this memory. And so finding how to flow in a way that's comfortable for you. I love that you're bringing that up. Something that I've done is, maybe this is just the artist in me that wants to see things from a different perspective, but I have a projector. And if I'm working on my computer all day and I want to watch a movie, it's so beautiful to watch it on a projector. It just does something different, right, for me.
Yes.
And I also want to flag some things that folks are writing in the chat box, because again, the chat box is blowing up. I love it. Thank you, everyone, in advance. So Amna writes, tactile feedback does do something for the brain, though. That physical book is good for the brain most of the time. And then Carrie writes, do the blue light reduction settings on the phone screens work? I don't know if you have an answer for that.
Yes. So they're often called like nighttime settings. It just puts the emission spectrums more towards the yellow or redder side than the blue white side. And so again, it's still going to do some stuff to your brain. It's not going to totally diminish the impact, but it does lessen it if, like, I always have my phone at nighttime settings. It always looks like a little sepia looking thing. But I think the important thing is have that as a backup. But my initial suggestion is try to not look at it. But then if you have to have it, those things do help diminish it just a little bit, but not fully.
And Sarah here writes, in the past, I've set my phone to grayscale and found it far less interesting with no colors.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's a very popular tip of ours. Turning your phone to grayscale. It's hidden in your settings, your disabilities. You've got to find it. But once you do that, it does two things. One, yes, it makes it less interesting. It's so boring. Like those Instagram pictures are cute, but like it's just easier to disengage. But also it's just a visual reminder. How often do we like look at our phone or open it because we wanted to check the time, but then we're sucked into some app. So it's a very physical, like, oh yeah, it's black and white. Like, why am I looking at it? It helps kind of jog that disruption of those kind of subconscious behaviors. So I definitely recommend the grayscale.
Absolutely. And then Julia writes, my kids bust me all the time for being on a device when I tell them not to, when watching TV, for example.
That's good. They're keeping you honest. I think as a family, I love that you do that as a family and have those conversations. I know how hard it is with kids because their brains are developing. So all these studies that I'm sharing with you, the developing brain is going to be more easily impacted. So that reward circuitry, that dopamine hit, it's just exponentially for kids. It kind of breaks my heart, just kind of the modern impact of how we're seeing that, how that's impacting their brains. The white matter, the microstructural patterns of our white matter are fundamentally changing in teenagers because of this just different way of living and our different interactions. So having these conversations with kids and family, bringing that in, sharing these awarenesses and building these habit changes together as a family, I think are very impactful as a whole. And really, again, that relationship piece of the puzzle can really thrive if you're intentional with those conversations. So I love that they're keeping you honest. That's great.
Yes. Thank you, Kate, for that. I want to keep you there for just a second. Can you share more tips and tricks on how we can be more mindful, especially when it comes to digital natives? So whether we have kids or not, you know, we might be creating products that kids might interact with, or we are a part of a community where, you know, our neighbors have kids or our nieces and nephews are around, and you know, not even to mention parents who actually have kids going through this now. Can you just share anything that you want? And I know that this wasn't a question here, but I know it's important for us to talk about.
So when you say digital natives, you mean the people creating the technology?
No, I mean kids who are born, or the folks who are born
got
when
it.
tech.
Yes. Yes. I gotcha. So yeah, it's really fascinating because I am of the age where the first half of my life was very little tech, dial up. I grew up with, having to wait for that interconnect connection, not just having it at the snap of the fingers. So I feel kind of lucky in the sense of I remember what it was like, and therefore I can kind of call back to those memories of how I can, be bored and fill that time without technology. But today, yes, the average age for kids to get a phone is in middle school. And it's incredibly difficult for parents to deny their kids this fundamental need where it's part of their society, getting these social platforms, being a part of them earlier and earlier, and just realizing that there are trends that show the impact on our self-esteem, our depression rates. Those are rising, and it's really scary for kids. So I think as much as they fight and as much as they may argue with you, it's very important to just always be aware and cognizant of these. Do your research, read these books, be involved, and have them be involved with you. It's like teaching any other skill like how to deal with bullying, how to eat healthy. These are all important topics that we help with our kids, how to have healthy relationships, how to deal with puberty. Like, these are things that we're used to teaching our kids. This is just another conversation that I think is really important to have on, when they ask for that phone, when they can't look away from the screen. Video games has been a longer addiction that we're aware of than the rest of tech, but it's something that we need to start talking about. So the best advice I can give is bringing them into the conversation. And I'm sure, I'm not a parent myself, but I'm sure there are times when you have to lay down the law and just kind of be that person in that kid's life. But I think it helps bring them in first and take those necessary steps like you would with any other kind of big social impact for that kid. So that would be where I would go.
Thank you. And again, I know we're just scratching the surface there. I'm curious to know, maybe someone on the call can let us know, and especially because I'm out of the States at this point, but is that in the curriculum? Like, you have sex education. Is there any like mindful tech education?
So I'm aware of some schools that have mindfulness coaches. I know that yoga and there's like yoga for kids today, and there's these kind of more attention around like emotional resilience, which I think are these kind of core principles and skills that help us address the tech issues that happen. Because a lot of time for kids, it's an emotional response. It is for adults too, but that's really where we start seeing like, oh, there's a problem here. It's it's stress, it's anxiety, it's them acting out, it's them being sad, depressed, etc. So that emotional resilience building, I have seen more of that. It's not part of like public school curriculum, but I have seen mindfulness coaches that our company has tried to work with, bringing in those kind of mindfulness and emotional resilience and like how to talk about emotions. Those I've been seeing the trends upward. I don't know how normal or common it is, however.
All right. Well, if anyone wants to hire Kay for her services, she's come to the education platforms as well. Julia writes here, my kids are in elementary school and their tech teachings are around safety as well, not talking to strangers online, etc. That's what she's seeing so far.
And I think those are, kind of like not putting your kids in dangerous situations, especially when there's outer things going on. So that makes sense. So that's good to hear that they're kind of like, that's the most extreme to me. It's like having like that kind of thing going on. It's very much like, don't take candy from strangers kind of situation. So I think, again, that's like a similar teaching we've always had, right? Like if there's a white van and they're giving you candy, stranger danger, stop, drop, and roll, like all these kind of fundamentals. So that's good to see that they're including the paths of how technology is also doing the similar things. So I think anything is better than nothing, to be honest.
Great. Thank you so much for that. All right, let's move on to the next question here. Is there a healthy number of hours per day to be tech-free?
Unfortunately, there is no magical number. And I'm going to be my own broken record of it's all about your awareness and intentions. An exercise that we do in a lot of our workshops is we have this worksheet where you figure out your baseline with time spent with technology. So being very honest with yourself, very objective and non-judgmental. Just you don't need a worksheet. Just write down a list of things that you do with technology and how many hours a week do you spend doing that thing. Social media, YouTube, work, listening to podcasts, browsing the internet, online shopping. Break down all these tasks, reading, whatever it is, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whatever, and find out how many hours a week do you spend without any technology at all. And the most common answer is 0, because we have, these sleep trackers that we sleep with. We use our phones to wake us up in the morning. That's okay. And I want you to know that that is okay. Technology is very prevalent. It is part of our lives. The question is, can something like this worksheet or this baseline activity highlight areas in your life where you're like, why am I spending like 10 hours watching Netflix? Or why am I spending, 5 hours in social media platforms? Like it kind of brings that awareness of, I didn't know I was doing that. And then again, always pulling back your intention of, did this week's worth of technology engagement, did I do what I wanted for the week? How do I feel emotionally? Do I feel good? Do I feel stressed? Really being aware of, here's some data for yourself, and then from there move forward. There's never going to be I spent 5 hours without any technology at all. That there's not going to be a magic number for you, but it's always about intention and awareness. So I highly recommend that activity if you have time, to just kind of see the numbers for yourself. That can help trigger some interesting data for yourself.
And Kay, I love that you're inviting us to write it down and not to get an app that tracks it for us, because it's clearly different when you write it down yourself instead of having, your phone do it. And I know that there are apps, I'm not trying to, knock them down, but, just to put that intentionality into practice. Someone here wrote that the most time they get, Carrie writes, when she's sleeping, that's the most time that she has without her tech. iPhone does screen time. I had to turn that off. It might be time to revisit that. And then Phil writes, that's great because it sounds like financial planning, which might be easier to grasp. Nothing wrong with spending money, but you're spending too much. But are you spending too much? Perhaps budgeting time with tech. Thank you, Phil, for that. Do you want to respond to any of those questions?
Yeah, I think the screen time tools are really impactful. So during that exercise, totally use your phone, because that's going to be the objective real number, not the number that you think you spent. And I know that Android phones are making that easier to see as well. So that's a great tool for that activity for sure. And then with the financial planning, I love that analogy. It's very similar, right? Like have a non-judgmental way of, I also liken it to, our diets and our fitness schedules. It's like, my doctor just told me eat less sugar and white processed foods. And I'm like, okay, but I still, I end up in a drive-through for McDonald's. So it's like those moments are okay. But then if my intention, I got to check back in with myself. What do I want to use my money for? What am I trying to save for? And is this detracting me from it? Why am I eating healthy? Why? Just telling me to save money or just telling me to eat well is not going to encourage me to actually do it. So being very intentional with, okay, I need to save for retirement, or my kids need to go to college, or I want to buy a new car, or, I don't want to die when I'm 60, or, whatever those clear goals are, make it so much easier to understand why you're doing something, and therefore make you more likely to actually do it.
Great. Thank you for that. All right, everyone, we've got about 10 minutes left. So if you have not had a chance to voice a response, a reflection, or a question, now is your time to shine. Again, Kay, I wanted to let you know as well, we've got 10 minutes left. So let's try to get through this question here. Oh, I see someone has written in the chat box. Ashley writes, I track screen time on my computer at home and at work. I have bedtime mode on my phone and an alarm at set times. I like the idea of understanding on why I am doing something. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. All right, so let's move on to this next question. Do you have tips for social media management? How can I be effective yet not spend my whole day scrolling through my phone?
Yes, I have many tips for social media management. I think that again, I'm a broken record here. It's all about awareness. What's your intention with those social media platforms? I already kind of talked about, the UX and the UI of these platforms are intentionally made to keep you engaged. So you will have to create some external triggers for yourself to kind of disrupt the infinite scrolling, if you will. So when you look at these platforms, I'll use like Facebook and TikTok because those are two that I personally use. So with Facebook, for me, it's all about connecting with people. And so when I find myself like it's so easy to just keep scrolling through the news feed. But what I do is I understand that intention. I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep engaging with Facebook because it is a way for me to connect with people. And then I schedule that time. So I have 15 minutes every evening where I'm intentionally wanting to connect with others through Facebook. And I check my book club, what book I need to read when we're meeting. I check my Buy Nothing group, which is all about reduce, reuse, recycle. Did anyone post anything interesting? Do I want to post something? And then maybe there are two people like I want to intentionally connect with, like my best friend from college. I haven't heard from her in 2 weeks. And then once my timer's going, and maybe after I've done all those things, I realize, oh, I have 5 minutes. So then I'll scroll through the news feed and just see what pops up and what's engaging. But once that timer goes off, I'm done. Being very strict with those restrictions and time limits is important too. So having that external timer, I mentioned Instagram has an internal timer, so it'll just pop up for you. Those are empowering. And then when you have platforms like TikTok or that are more about fun, laughing, just seeing creative content from people around the world. That again is another fine use of technology, but I have to time box it. I recommend scheduling that time. We schedule so many aspects of our lives. We schedule when we're going to eat. We schedule when we're going to go see a movie when we could do that. We schedule our meetings. Why not schedule with tech? It's the best way for us to stay in control of it, be intentional with that time. And then once that time is over, move on to something else. And that external trigger can really help. There are also tools you can use. I've heard of, I think it's Offline is a app you can download to help you with these kind of timers and things like that. So if you need to use an app to create those for yourself, that's fine as well. I use the timer app on my phone just to have something loud and obnoxious remind me of when that time changes.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Julia writes, I removed Facebook and Twitter from my phone and tablet so I can only check on my laptop.
That's wonderful. That reminds me of one of our participants had to log out of Facebook on her phone. And there was I forget why it had to happen. And then she was like, you know what? I'm not going to log back in because this is going to make it harder for me to engage with. And she came back like a week or two later talking about how many times she just absentmindedly clicked that Facebook button, even though and having to log in was like a trigger for her of, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. So I think it's a really powerful tool to remove it from all your devices, be intentional about where it's accessible. For me, I block it from my work computer, but then when it's downtime for me, I can access it from my personal computer. So those are all very intentional things that you can do for yourself. So I love that idea.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kay. I want to hold for a light pause to see if someone would like to hop off of mute and just speak with Kay, maybe reflect or ask a question. Some folks might need that. So I'll hold for a light pause here. All right, so I'll move on to this next question. And we've got about 5 more minutes, so you still have some time to shine if you'd like to write in the chat box or come off of mute. So let's take this last question here, Kay, that's on the screen. I find myself battling between wanting to connect with others while getting away from technology during the workday. What activities do you find yourself doing during the day to stay safe while connecting with others and disconnecting from technology?
This is a great question because it's all about that work-life balance that I know is extremely hard to do today. And I know there were other questions about creating that kind of how do we separate this space when the workspace is now also invading our homes? It's part of where we are. And I think what it's really important to do here is, again, understanding intentions and awareness of that. But we have to be honest with ourselves that, these two lives are intertwined throughout the day. It's no longer I drive and go to work and then my kids go to school and everything else is fine. It's now nope. I'm at home working. My kids are, probably trying to jump on Zoom for virtual class. My pets are under the desk with me. I need to feed all these people, or whatever variables are coming into play. So I think that kind of, in and out sort of model is very different for us. And so being very intentional with our environment and how we create these different spaces, I think can also help kind of separate. I'm connecting here for my job and for my work, and over here I'm connecting with my friends and my family. I think that that physical environment space can do a lot for us in not making it feel so overwhelming. So we physically have to break ourselves from work to get to the other types of connection. Um, and so during the day, I really try to focus on, my typical work hours. I have a separate room where I go to do that. And it is, on a laptop, on a computer, sometimes using my phone. And then during the evening, again, it's all about scheduling and, being in control and intention setting. So there are certain days of the week where I have no connection with anyone after work. And then there are other days where I intentionally set connection time. I mentioned my book club. We meet a lot of Mondays. I have a group I do trivia with on Tuesdays. And so having that kind of routine really helps me kind of prepare for those social moments. I often call myself an extroverted introvert. So when I'm in those moments, I can engage and be happy, knowing that, tomorrow I have a night off, if you will, and I can do something different. And really what you decide to do in that time is totally up to you. I've picked up so many new hobbies since this quarantine. I picked up the ukulele. I've been reading a lot more and doing more jigsaw puzzles and like crossword puzzles. And those are like lighthearted, fun things, but it's really whatever brings joy to you, whatever utilizes your brain in a way that you want to build your brain and use your time. And again, reminding yourself of, what do I want to create? Do I want to feel happy and relaxed? What can I do to create that feeling? Or do I want to be really productive and create and a new thing? And maybe you're an engineer, so during the day you're coding and at night you're also coding. But if it's creating the things you want for yourself, then that's fine. And then if it makes you tired, that's when you start kind of reeling it back in and adjusting your interactions.
Beautiful. Well, the time has flown by, like I mentioned it would. So I would love if you could just leave us with some food for thought. Let us know how we can find you and support you offline when we finish this call. And then, anything else that you'd like to share, but we'd love for you to leave us with some food for thought and then let us know how we can connect with you.
Sure. Some food for thought is I've shared some studies with y'all. These were done like back in 2012 or earlier. So just know that these are real things that are happening in our brains and our behaviors, and that it's not bad or terrible, but it's something that we should really be conscientious of in our own day-to-day lives, understanding that we have to take very specific intentional efforts into building and creating what we want to take, and what we want to create. So I think, again, finding a group of people who can, support you through your journey, whatever that may look like for you, finding that community, practicing, experimenting with these tips that we've shared today, finding what works, what doesn't work for you, and then really putting that work in, and then reflecting on, did that change create what I wanted it to? And really cherishing those moments of success for yourself. Those are all really key parts of mindfulness. So awareness, intention, I can't say that enough. If you want to contact me and let me know, I am mindfulusefotechnology.com. You can email me at contact@mindfulusefotechnology.com. We are here for you. We love hearing stories and providing guidance. If you're interested in bringing this kind of topic into your company, we do lunch and learns, trainings, workshops. We are here for you. This is the kind of culture shift that we really want to make. So we hope that we hear from you soon.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Kay, for the beautiful work that you are doing. And good luck to everyone as you stay mindful with tech. We look forward to seeing you on the next Chat and Learn. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank